It is officially official. The Baltimore Ravens will face off against the Buffalo Bills in the divisional round, a week 4 rematch. We talk about how both teams match up with one another, Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen, initial storylines, and so much more coming up on an instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day as well. Free and available for you, all podcasting platforms. So in video form, if you like to watch our shows, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. In audio form, if you prefer listening, be sure to follow along and subscribe over wherever you get your podcast. Ravens news, analysis, updates, whole 9 yards. We're here for you 5 days a week, every single weekday. Plus, we do bonus episodes like instant reactions like this one. We also go live after every Ravens game. We had a party last night celebrating the Ravens beating the Steelers in the wild card round. So building up amazing things over here on Locked On Ravens. Would love if you join along for the ride. And if you've already been along for the ride, thank you for the support. Today's bonus instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. It feels good today. It's a stress-free Sunday. The Ravens, they took care of business last night against the Steelers. And I guess really, though, the only thing that we were looking at is who the Ravens are going to play in the divisional round, and it is officially the Buffalo Bills. Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen, round 2, the top 2 MVP candidates facing off again. So we're going to see it. Obviously, both teams very different from the first time that they matched up. We're not going to dive too much into what happened the first time. We'll do a little bit, but just because, again, Ravens are a lot different of a team, and the Bills are a lot different of a team as well. But I said it last night. I even said it before the Pittsburgh game. If the Ravens were to advance, which they have, I felt good with whatever matchup they would have in the second round. Does that mean they're going to win? Obviously not, right? They have to take care of business. Buffalo is a heck of a team. They have a lot of good players over there. We're going to talk about matchups as well. So appreciate everybody who's live here on YouTube. And if you're listening after the fact on YouTube or in audio form, appreciate you as well. We already got the chat going here. So as I always do on these lives, be sure to tell me where you're tuning in from. Put it in the live chat, put it in the comments, message me on social media if you're listening. It's so cool to see how many people we have not only listening in the Baltimore and Maryland area, but also across the country and across the world. So really appreciate everybody for that. Really tough game for Denver, for being honest, just to talk about. Buffalo beats Denver 31-7, which I know there are a lot of people talking Denver upset. I was on that train at first, and then I kind of got off of it because I figured that, the Bills and Josh Allen with his experience would be able to take care of a rookie quarterback in the playoffs. So it's going to be an exciting game. I think it's actually going to be a very good matchup, but I do think it favors Baltimore, and we'll talk about why. Javon, what time will the game be? That has not been announced yet. I would assume that's either announced tonight or tomorrow after the Rams-Vikings game. If I had to assume, just a guess, I have no inside information on this, I would assume it might be the Sunday early game because I don't think they want to put Buffalo on a short week, and the Ravens could benefit from the extra 12-ish hours of rest, 15 hours of rest. So my prediction would be Sunday early game. There's a possibility it could be Saturday late, but I don't think that I don't think it's fair to any team to put them on short rests in the playoffs. So I would probably say Sunday 1 p.m. is where I would go. And look at this. We have so many. We got Westminster, Maryland, Berlin, Germany, Boone, North Carolina, Pikesville, Maryland. We got Albuquerque. Man, just everybody here. Charleston, South Carolina. Really appreciate everybody for listening here. So let's dive into just who Buffalo is at first. We'll look at their regular season stats. Now, again, regular season versus playoffs, it is different. But first of all, who was Buffalo in 2024 during the regular season? Let's start there. The Bills had a top 5 passing offense with Josh Allen at the helm, 7.3 net yards per attempt. They obviously have weapons there with Khalil Shakir, Amari Cooper, who Cooper has not been as big of a part as the offense as people would have thought since coming over from Cleveland. In this game against Denver, only 2 receptions for 8 yards and really hasn't done much of anything. Actually, I'm going to pull up his stats quickly because I thought Amari was going to make a much bigger impact in Buffalo than he has. His Buffalo stats, He's played in 8 games since coming over from Cleveland. He's had 20 catches for 297 yards and 2 scores. I think Amari's a super talented player. I don't think it's worked the way that Buffalo and Cooper maybe have envisioned it. I'm not sure. So that's something that as we get into later in the week, we can talk about more. But again, top 5 passing offense for the Bills. You have a tight end group like with Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox. Obviously, James Cook can catch the ball out of the backfield. And speaking of James Cook, the Bills were top 11. They were 11th in the league in rushing offense this season, 4.5 yards per carry. That obviously led by James Cook, who had 16 touchdowns on the season, and who I think personally is a heck of a player. And when you compare Buffalo's offense to Pittsburgh's offense, Baltimore's wild card matchup versus their divisional round matchup, the Buffalo offense is worlds better. I said it last night. I said it this morning on our episode. We did a bonus episode talking about Patrick Queen getting taunted by Roquan Smith, and Roquan taunting the Steelers was a really fun episode. If you haven't checked that out, be sure to check it out. But I said last night, the Steelers offense is going to be the worst offense that the Ravens faces in the playoffs by a pretty wide margin. If you've been listening to me every day on Locked On Ravens, I've been very low on the Pittsburgh offense. I know a lot of people have too. That's not necessarily a hot take or anything, but the Buffalo offense is worlds better than what Pittsburgh's is. Now, I think the interesting thing when you look at Buffalo's offense is the offensive line, too, is a lot better than Pittsburgh's. Buffalo is one of the best offensive lines in the league, so the Ravens' defensive line is going to have to be on point with that. Buffalo also doesn't turn the ball over, and on defense, they turn the ball over on your opposing offense. So the Bills, number 1 in offensive turnovers, which is a good thing. I'm talking about least amount of turnovers. Bills with 8 on the season, 8 turnovers on the year for Buffalo in 2024. Their defense, 3rd, 32 turnovers forced. It's a good turnover defense. Now, some of the defensive issues for Buffalo, their defense really fell off towards the bottom end of the year, and the run defense was never really that good. They're 19th in the league in yards per attempt given up with 4.5. In the passing game, they're 17th with 6.2. Now, Buffalo have been dealing with injuries. The first time the Baltimore and Buffalo matched up, they didn't have a couple of their key defenders, but even still, you look at who Baltimore has on their offensive line, you look at how they have a Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. Buffalo's defensive front is not nearly as physical as a Kansas City or a Pittsburgh. And I don't want that to get lost, by the way. Even though the Ravens beat up on the Steelers last night, that does not mean Pittsburgh has a bad defensive line or that they are not a good defense. Last 5 weeks of the season, they were a pretty bad defense, but the talent is still there. And side note, I'm very curious to see what they do with Mike Tomlin because I don't know. By the way, Steelers, hashtag extend Russell Wilson for the next 10 seasons. I think league would be shaking if they did it. But I just don't know if Buffalo has the horses on the defensive line to keep up with Baltimore's rushing attack. And the other big part of this, Steve mentions it here, Zay Flowers hopefully coming back. Again, I'm not going to say he's back until we hear it, but you would hope that Zay is able to come back this week against Buffalo, and that would open up so many things for this offense this offense has already opened up, right? I feel very confident, especially with what we watched last night. The Ravens offense can go toe-to-toe with anybody, assuming they don't make mistakes, they don't have penalties, and that's any team, right? If you don't make mistakes, don't have penalties, you're probably in a pretty good spot. But that's been the calling card for Baltimore this season. It's been, well, if they play up to their standard and they don't force, bad plays on themselves and don't have bad situations and put themselves in those, they usually are able to dominate their opponent. But if they do, it's a lot tougher of a game, and they usually lose that. So I feel good against the matchup against the Bills. Doesn't mean the Ravens are going to win. Doesn't mean I think the Ravens are going to blow out the Bills. I think this is honestly going to be a more competitive game. But I do think there is the option, I would say, for the Ravens to blow out the Bills. I don't know if there's the option for the Bills to blow out the Ravens, because I'll say it on the opposite side. If you listened to me last week on Locked On Ravens, I talked about how Pittsburgh defense, Baltimore defense, if you want to call that a wash, that's fine. But I don't think that the Pittsburgh offense has enough firepower to keep up with the Ravens. I ended up being right. A lot of people ended up being right on that. It's the other side of this week for the Bills. I think the Bills offense and Ravens offense, you can call that a wash. I think both are incredible units. Both have incredible quarterbacks. Both have a lot of talent on that side of the ball. But I think the Baltimore defense, because let's remember, week 4, this Ravens defense was still playing Marcus Williams, still playing Eddie Jackson, did not find their stride. This is a different Ravens defense, much like it's a different Bills defense, much like it's a different Bills offense, and honestly, much like it's a different Ravens offense. These are two different teams from when they faced off in week 4. So we can talk about Derrick Henry having 199 against the Bills. That happened, and it's real. And, in MVP conversations, I don't think you should discount that. But in terms of divisional round, playing nearly, 4 months later at this point, it's not going to go the same way. It could go worse for the Ravens. It could go better for the Ravens. It's not going to be the same. And I see Flagship talking about this point too, which I do like. Our offense should be able to put points on them, forcing Josh to be one-dimensional. This is exactly what they did against the Steelers last night, and this is exactly what they need to do to the Bills this time around in the divisional round as well. I've said this forever. I've said it for years. If you've been listening to me for years here, if you can make your opposing offense one-dimensional, if you can take away an aspect of what that offense wants to do, it is going to be such an easier time for you as a defense because you can focus. If there's not a threat of a run game, if they can eliminate James Cook from the game and his effectiveness on the game and say, Josh, you need to air it out 40 times here in order to have a shot to beat us. If the Ravens can say that to the Bills, it's going to make things so much easier because the pass rushers can just kind of pin their ears back and go, like pass rush mode fully in there. So that's going to be big because the Bills can run the football. But obviously, if you want to talk about the Ravens, this is the best run defense in football in all season for the most part. Not every single game, but for the most part, we've seen Baltimore neutralize and eliminate that aspect of their opposing offense that they're facing, and it is force defenses to go and try to air the ball out. And, that was a good strategy before the Ravens had their big closed doors open for a meeting. But now this is a different situation. This is a different defense. And Zane, I could see this happening. Going to be a low-scoring game. Oh, wow. That's going to be Lamar Jackson against the Bills. He's going to be zooming. Derrick Henry. That was Lightning McQueen, Derrick Henry, you just heard outside there. So I think that both teams are going to be able to run. I agree with this, Zane. And just like you heard outside, I think we're going to see a lot of zooming. We're going to hear a lot of zooming. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry. I feel like Josh Allen, obviously, he's too good of a player to not break some big plays in this game. You got to kind of account for that. So we're going to see what ends up happening. But initial thoughts is I just don't know if Buffalo has the horses on defense to keep up with Baltimore's offensive side of the ball. Coming up in the second part of the show, I want to talk more about the personnel on both sides of the ball, who Buffalo has on both offense and defense, as well as how they match up with Baltimore and some strengths and weaknesses that Baltimore could have against this Buffalo unit. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to on this instant reaction, not post-game. We're talking pre-game, very far pre-game, instant reaction edition of Locked on Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by LinkedIn. And growing your small business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. And better hires start with smarter insights. We can all face that. That's where LinkedIn comes in. With the strongest hiring data available, LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. I've used LinkedIn Jobs myself, and I can tell you it's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. Small businesses are wearing a lot of hats, so every hire is crucial. LinkedIn gets that. That's why they connect you with the best candidates using data you won't find anywhere else. From unique skills and interests to the connections you share, LinkedIn helps you find the right person for the job. In fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high-quality candidates. I know from experience how important it is to make the right hiring decisions, and having access to insights like what skills candidates have or how they're connected to your network, that can help you feel confident when you're pulling the trigger. Hire smarter this year and find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And the show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I've had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in cancel subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is a subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher breaking down the Ravens and Bills divisional round matchup. Of course, Baltimore coming off an impressive statement win in the wild card over the Buffalo Bills. And there's a lot that we can dive into, or against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm already looking ahead. Wild card against the Steelers, divisional against the Bills. I'm getting my matchups mumble jumbled here, but I appreciate everybody for tuning in, making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. Maybe it's your second if you listen to our morning show. We had a big party last night celebrating the Steelers' loss, the Ravens win. So if you want to be a part of this community, I'm so proud of what we've built here. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form, follow along in audio form, and tell a friend, tell a family member. We have them covered with 5 days a week of Ravens content. So let's talk about just how everybody's feeling, right? In the chat. And if you're in the comments after the fact, or if you're a listener, be sure to message me on social media your thoughts. Scale of 1 to 10. How confident do you feel that the Ravens are going to beat the Bills in the divisional round? 1 to 10. 1 being you're not confident at all. 10 being they're going to win, no questions asked. 1 to 10. Obviously, I think it is very dependent on how the Ravens play. I feel like if they played the way that they did against Pittsburgh, it's pretty easily a 9.5 or 10 for me. I don't really feel like, any team can beat the Ravens if they play that way. But, I think it's reasonable to assume some human error and assume that not everything is going to go right for this team. So I'm going to say a 7. I'm going to say a 7 for me. 7.5 even I might go up to. 7.5. Because I feel like Buffalo's a talented team. I feel like if it's a shootout, Buffalo and Baltimore can hang with each other. But again, it just comes down to, can Buffalo stop Derrick Henry? And I feel like the Steelers were more equipped to do so, and they didn't do it. I feel like the Chiefs could be more equipped to do so. Maybe we'll see. But I just don't feel confident. This kind of goes into the personnel things that we can talk about. The Bills signed a couple of defensive linemen to try to help them out. Later in the year, Jordan Phillips came over from Dallas. Quentin Jefferson came over from Cleveland. Those two, they've been trying there. I mean, you have Von Miller, AJ Epinesa as pass rushers. Daquan Jones has been in there. Greg Rousseau. I mean, it's not like they don't. I mean, Ed Oliver, they don't. The talent, they have it. Like, the Bills have talent on their defense. I just don't think it's come together for them the way that they've needed it to this season. And this is a good point. This is kind of like the Clash of the Titans here. Gaming in my car. Buffalo's never lost at home this season. That is accurate. That's going to be, can the Ravens break that trend? Can the Ravens be the team that beats Buffalo at home this year? That's going to be really big. So the way that the Ravens lose this game is if they can't run the ball. You might be thinking, oh, yeah, duh, Kevin, like, nice one. But, I mean, it's true, because the way that the Ravens have been able to establish things, they've come back passing the football. If the Ravens have to abandon the run, which hopefully they never do, but if they do, you feel a lot more confident with what you've seen in games, example, for the Cincinnati game both times, right? Game for Cincinnati. The Ravens, they had to come back in that game. They were down 14. They were down 10. The narrative that the Ravens can't come back was always wrong. Even years ago, it was always wrong. I just think that's a narrative that people wanted to throw on Lamar, because they feel like, oh, if you make Lamar pass, they're going to win the game, which, again, was another wrong narrative from the start. But Lamar has proven that with guys like Rashod Bateman, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Zay Flowers, right, it's going to be really big for them to establish the run and work your play action off of that. I've talked about that all season, where the threat of play action, I mean, the Steelers were just in shambles all of last night because they could not stop anything. They tried to commit to one thing, and the Ravens just gashed them with the other. And then when they tried to go all out against the run, it was, okay, well, Lamar's just going to drop back here, take check down option, take a short game here. That's what Baltimore has been good at for the not every game, but for the most part this season. So I just think that for me, Baltimore, open up that playbook a little bit. We saw it with the wild card snap, their wild card. Well, I guess technically, yes. Wildcat in the wild card snap to Derrick Henry. Teams are opening up the playbook. I mean, we saw Curtis Samuel get some run in the Buffalo game today, right? That could be a factor. The Ravens will have to figure out that. But we'll see, because the Bills last time, and I'm going to pull up quickly the inactives for the Bills-Ravens week 4, because they did not have a couple of key defenders. They didn't have Teron Johnson. Terrell Bernard wasn't in there. So it's not like the Bills were full strength, but the Ravens also were not the team that they were as well. Actually, I'm curious to remember who the Ravens had inactive in that game. Were the Ravens missing anybody in that game? Andrew Voorhees, Michael Pierce. So this was the game that Voorhees lost the left guard job to Patrick McCary. And then Michael Pierce, who obviously is a big part of what the Ravens do, he was also out in this game. So again, I think the Bills' losses were bigger than the Ravens' losses in the game. But regardless, we're not looking back to week 4. We're looking ahead to the divisional round. And again, I don't know, JB, I don't know if he's going to be back. Zay Flowers is going to be back. We'll see. I don't want to put an official word on it. I mean, we're going to see. And I think the Ravens will probably hold that pretty tight to the vest anyway. But John Harbaugh said that he'll, begin his journey. So hopefully that means that he will be able to play. I think that Buffalo, you look at their offensive side of the ball and their conversion rates, because I always like to look in conversion rates. This is a battle of the red zone titans. Battle of the red zone titans. Buffalo's a really good red zone conversion percentage team. They were second best in the league. 71.6% of their red zone trips, they converted on those. They're also a really good fourth down team, 72.7%. Also a really good third down team, 44.1%. That's seventh. So their seventh and third down percentage, second and fourth down percentage, and second in red zone percentage. But Baltimore's also a really good red zone offense. They were tops in the league with 74.2. They're also a really good third down offense. They're 48.2. Also a really good fourth down defense, I'd say, is better than fourth down offense for Baltimore. But the Ravens are only a middling red zone defense. It's been a lot better. Again, I think a lot of those stats are misleading because, remember, we were talking about a passing defense in Baltimore that was 29th, 28th, 27th, like 30th. It was really bad over the first couple months of the season. They have upped that number to 13th. They're the 13th best pass defense in the league now. So there's been so much improvement. And so I don't want to say, we're going to take into account the whole season, because really the Baltimore defense has been playing with the personnel they've been playing with for the last 2 months. So that's what it's going to be. Plus, Zayden says, let's score first. The Pittsburgh Steelers taking the ball first, by the way, was absolutely crazy. The fact that they wanted to set the tone, and I do some work over at the Ryan Ripken show, and we had Nick Moore, the Ravens long snapper, on after the game. And he said that, guys take that personal when, you want to go out and establish that. I think he said Roquan took that personal, and Roquan was on one last night. Absolutely on one. So, again, deferring is usually just we're going to try to strategically take the ball. We're going to try to get it in the second half and score. Pittsburgh taking the ball, not scoring, and then letting Baltimore go up 7-0. That was the game in itself. And Steelers are really never able to recover there. But again, it's going to be cold. Buffalo's a crazy place to play. They're going to have the home field advantage. Hopefully as many Ravens fans can get to Buffalo as possible so that home field advantage can be evened out a little bit. So we're going to see. And this is a test. This is a big test for the Ravens. And this is a stat here, too, from Baltimore football history. Last 6 opponents of the season, ranked 24th in passing yards, haven't played a good passing team since Cincinnati. It will be a test. This will be the biggest test. And as I said, the Steelers will be the worst offense that Baltimore sees in the playoffs. So it's going to be a matter of Baltimore's defense. And I know we'll get to this. We'll kind of transition into the final part of the show here, because I know a lot of people are talking about Brandon Stephens. I know a lot of people are doing it. We're going to have that conversation and a lot more coming up on this instant reaction bonus edition of Locked On Ravens, where the Baltimore Ravens will be facing off against the Buffalo Bills in the divisional round. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets. Win or lose, the FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. So that Ravens and Steelers game last night, Ravens were 9.5-point favorites for the majority of this game, and the Ravens were able to come through 14-point win. So if you were able to believe in the Ravens, you were able to do that on FanDuel, you're probably living large over on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher rocking out with you Sunday afternoon about 4:30 here as we start off this third segment live on Locked On Ravens. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form. It's been amazing growing these communities. Tomorrow is going to be my 1,421st consecutive weekday episode of Locked On Ravens dating back to 2019. So, look, I'm committed to giving the best daily Ravens coverage I can. We are working on some upgrades. We have the sleek look with the corner, my name, and the handle. You can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram at ChaosStriker34. And to be working on some video upgrades, some audio upgrades, and I'm excited to see background upgrades. We're really going to go full force over the course of the rest of the playoffs and the offseason here. Baltimore needs to keep their foot on the gas, though. They need to, because they're not going to have an easy opponent for the rest of the way here. I think that even Pittsburgh, that was a physical game. Really, really physical game. So I don't really know. And by the way, MVP, I know a lot of people are talking about, MVP this. The MVP is a regular season award, regardless of if Lamar has a good game or a bad game, regardless if Josh has a good game or a bad game. Doesn't matter. It's a regular season award. It's not going to have any bearing on the conversation. I think votes might already be in. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But MVP, we're going to hear narratives about, if whoever has a good or bad game, this is going to change the MVP. No. MVP's regular season, all right? Which I know there was so much controversy about, Lamar lost in the AFC Championship game last season. He's not the MVP. MVP's regular season. We're talking about the playoffs. And Rainmaker asking, what's the Buffalo run defense? Buffalo run defense on the season in 2024, 19th in net yards per attempt. I know some people go by yards in terms of, if you want to go by yards, Buffalo is 12th. For those who don't know, I go by net yards per attempt because, let's face it, if you in a team, one team has 100 rushing attempts and one team has 500 rushing attempts. The team with 500 rushing attempts is going to have more yards than you. So they are going to be ranked ahead of you in the yards category. But if that 500 rushing attempts team has 1,000 yards and is averaging 2 yards per carry, they're not running the ball well. If the 100 carry team has 1,000 rushing yards, they're averaging 10 yards per carry, that team is running the ball better. So I go by net yards per attempt instead of total yards. So to me, Buffalo is the 19th best run defense in the NFL. So that to me is the big key here. That's the only key in my opinion. Well, obviously not the only key, but it's the biggest one to me. Buffalo's run defense versus Baltimore's run offense. It was the key in the first game. And while, again, it's not going to be the same matchup the first time around, I do think that if Buffalo can stop the run, they're going to have a much better shot to win this game. And part of that starts in the trenches, up front, on the offensive line. We have to give another round. I'll give Roger Rosengarten as many round of applause as I can here. Unbelievable against TJ Watt. Neutralized one of the best defensive players in this game, a future first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion. Roger Rosengarten stepped up to the plate. The entire offensive line honestly did for the most part. There were some whiff blocks here, some whiff blocks there, but I cannot give enough credit to Roger Rosengarten in that line. And the turnaround that group has had from the first couple of weeks of the season has been astronomical. I'm not saying it's been perfect because it hasn't, but that's one of the biggest keys, as I've said multiple times here on the show. Lamar Jackson is Superman. Derrick Henry is Superman, but they can't do it all by themselves. Now, let's talk about Brandon Stephens. I know that's someone a lot of people want to talk about here, so we'll talk about Brandon Stephens. It's been rough for Brandon Stephens this season. It's been a very disappointing year, down year from Brandon compared to what we were able to see for him last season. He's definitely lost himself decently big chunk of money as well. I think if the Ravens wanted to re-sign him, they could for a generally cheap contract. Now, again, the days of shadowing in the NFL are all but over. It's very rare that a receiver gets shadowed. So I know that people were talking about putting Marlon on George Pickens or Nate Wiggins on George Pickens. Baltimore plays sides. So Stephens being on his side, that's what it's going to be. And Pickens was lined up there. There were some moments that, Brandon, I think him and Kyle Hamilton had some miscommunication, and that resulted in a touchdown to Van Jefferson. Pickens had a couple plays. It's as clear as day, right? Teams are picking on Brandon Stephens. And part of that is because you don't want to pick on Marlon Humphrey. You don't want to pick on Nate Wiggins. Those guys are too good. They're playing too good. So obviously, by process of elimination, it's going to be Brandon Stephens who has struggled all season. I just think that for a guy like Brandon Stephens, and here, Baltimore football history, I think, says it pretty well. He never makes a play on the ball. He can be close a lot, but he never makes a play on the ball. And I'll illustrate this. I'll use the Pickens example again, although there are other receivers you can use this with. George Pickens, one of the things that he does one of the best in the league at, is showing the late hand. So as a cornerback, you are looking for a cue to turn your head around for the ball, right? You're looking at your receiver. You want to look for a cue to get your head around for the ball. That cue sometimes is a receiver, either is you can clearly see him tracking a thrown ball, looking up, or puts his hands out. And if he's trying to anticipate that throw, if he puts his hands out too early, the corner can turn around and say, oh, I know you're going for the ball. Let me turn around and swat at it. What Pickens does, and a lot of other receivers do, is they show the late hand. So they only show their hands to go for the ball when the ball is right in the breadbasket. And if you're a corner that doesn't have the instincts, can't turn your head around for the ball like that, if you're showing those hands late as a receiver, you're not giving the corner any cue that the ball is even coming. So Brandon Stephens is looking around like, oh, wait. When was the ball thrown? What's going on? So in this game, again, the Amari situation in Buffalo is weird. I don't know what that's going to look like. But if it's a Khalil Shakir or Matt Collins, who has had a surprisingly good year for the Bills, I think not a lot of people were expecting Matt Collins to do what he's doing, but Collins was really good in this game. He had a couple of really big, he had the one catch in the Denver game, which was, I think, a really nice play. But Matt Collins has been Buffalo's, I think was he their leading touchdown? No. No. Yes, I was correct. Look at me. I doubted myself, but I was right. He was their leading touchdown receiver in 2024. Matt Collins, 5 touchdowns. So whether it is any of those guys, the Bills are going to go with Brandon Stephens, right? It is what it is. It's just a matter of limiting those mistakes and, in my opinion, generating pressure on Josh. Now, again, Josh can get out of the pocket. Here's my thing with Russell Wilson, especially last night and honestly the other game the Ravens played against Pittsburgh. He tried to be Lamar Jackson, right? He tried to be Lamar Jackson, where it was really like he was trying to get around to the corner. He was trying to make some magic happen. Russ is not, he's not that guy, right? Russ is not that guy. Where Josh is that guy. Josh and Lamar are two of the best running threats in this league. And if you let Josh get going, we're going to see what ends up happening, which I don't think is going to be good for the Ravens. You cannot let Josh get going, just like you can't let Lamar get going. If you give these teams momentum plays, it's going to be a bad day. That's my saying. So I just feel like for the Bills, stopping Josh on the ground, eliminating that, because the same thing with Baltimore's defense, limiting the Bills' offense and making them one-dimensional, that's going to be the same thing that Buffalo's trying to do to Baltimore and trying to say, hey, we're going to give you all this different stuff and we're going to try to take away an aspect of your offense and make you do the other part. Now, Baltimore's run offense might be too dominant and it doesn't really matter, much like we saw last night, but eliminate that part of Josh's game, right? Don't make him into a runner. Make him throw the ball. And that's not me being, oh, Josh can't throw. Of course not. Josh can throw the football. Yeah. Both Lamar and Josh are two of the best throwers in this league. But you eliminate the aspect of Josh being that dual threat guy, and I think that can help your defense as a whole. So, and, Adrian talking about whether sending help to Brandon's side, whatever it may be, safety up over the top. I mean, there are different ways that they can handle it, but in terms of putting him on the worst receiver or having a guy shadow, that's just not what they're going to do. A snap decrease, maybe, but, Trey White got burned on a play in this game too. So obviously Marlon and Nate are your guys, but with the multi-personnel wide receiver sets that these teams throw out there, I don't think Brandon is a bad corner. He just has pretty crippling weaknesses. And that's the issue for him, where it just seems like he's so close all the time, but it's that one weakness that keeps getting him in trouble over and over and over again. And 77 here, Bills are too tiny. I love the matchup for the Ravens. I like it too. I like it a lot. The Bills are a good team. I really like the Bills being a good team. But I just feel like Baltimore, the defensive front for Buffalo, I don't see how they can stop this game. So we'll see what ends up happening. And I saw a question up here. Alberto, I don't know how we're feeling about Zay. I think he comes back 100%. 100%, I'll say no. I don't think Zay's going to be 100%. But it's just a matter of pain tolerance for Zay and how much of his movement ability and his shiftiness ability he has. The Zay thing, I go back to what Mark Ingram was when he got hurt in 2019 in the playoffs, or what Mark Andrews has been the past 2 long playoff runs as the 1 seed when he was hurt and came back. Sometimes these guys aren't 100% and it limits their ability on the field. and that just is what it is. Nobody's healthy at this point in the season in the NFL. There are always guys who are beat up, banged up, and whatever it may be. But if Zay is back, even just him being a decoy, which I wouldn't expect them to use him as just a decoy, but even if he is a decoy, I feel like that's a big boost to Baltimore's offense as a whole. And yes, I agree with this point here. I think keeping Josh on the bench, run the ball, stop the run. If we go 13 runs in a row, eat up 9 minutes of the clock like we did against Pittsburgh, the Bills are in trouble. The Steelers held the ball for 20 minutes in the game last night. They barely had the ball. And that was a big reason why Baltimore was able to win, because the Steelers just couldn't possess the ball. They couldn't hold it for a long amount of time. So I agree. Win the time of possession battle. Be efficient. I think Baltimore will be okay. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens, this instant reaction live edition. Bills and Ravens facing off in the divisional round. Should be an amazing matchup. Of course, we'll have coverage for you all week here on Locked On Ravens. So on the way out, hit that like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form. We'll be back here tomorrow, 6 a.m. Eastern time, breaking down more of the divisional round matchup, talking about key storylines, key headlines, and so much more. So be sure to stay tuned for that. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.